All right, number 10 says that we're doing the quantity. So this is 10 on page 37 again. And we are doing the following. So this is for A. We want to do Q is equal to A divided by B, where A is equal to 20 plus or minus 1, and B is equal to 10 plus or minus 1. I kind of like these problems to the extent that they kind of really simplify things. We don't have to worry about the units or anything like that. So I do feel like that's kind of a helpful thing. Again, cannot stress enough, I'm not going to do the range method, but you should try the range method, right? So take this problem, problem A, and do it by the range method. Now, the reason why I think the range method would be really helpful for you, especially in the case of problems like this, is because subtraction and division is the place where you are going to run into the most problems, because the range method is a little more complicated when you're doing the division and you're doing the subtraction. So if I were going to do the range method, what I would want to figure out is what is the biggest value of A and what's the smallest value of B. So that would be 21 on top and that would be 9 on the bottom. That would give me my biggest value for Q. Then I would say, well, what about the smallest value? Well, that would be the smallest number on top, that would be 19, divided by 11 on the bottom, because I want the biggest number. And that would give me the lowest value for Q. And then from that point, I feel like everyone should know what to do. You're going to subtract, divide by 2, and that's it. You're all done. That's the uncertainty. That's the absolute uncertainty. I'm going to solve this way. Oh my God, sorry. Delta Q over Q is equal to delta A over A plus delta B over B. So I'm just going to plug all those things in, just like I did on the last problem. What I'm leaving out is the delta Q. That's the one thing I don't know right now, because everything else I know. I know what Q is. It's 20 times 10. The A and the B, I know everything about it. It's only the delta Q that I don't really know. So this will be 20 times 10 equal to 1 over 20 plus 1 over 10. Okay, now in this case, 1 over 20 plus 1 over 10 is actually pretty easy. And one of the things I like about these problems is because this is something they could ask on the multiple choice. And this is like exactly what I'm talking about. You don't need a calculator to finish this problem. You should be able to finish this problem without a calculator. So a couple ways that we could do it. One way would be to get a common denominator, although you don't have to. You could go to a calculator and do 1 over 20 plus 1 over 10. That'll totally work. But in this case, the common denominator would be 20. So this is still 1 over 20. And let me just ask you if this is confusing. If anybody feels like you want me to explain this a little bit more, please put something in the chat. Just, like it's something that in theory you should have learned, but like I know a lot of people, it's not a super strong thing. When you're trying to get a common denominator here, it's not the same as algebra. Okay, I can do anything to a fraction as long as I do the same thing on the top and the bottom. I don't even need an equal sign. I could just take any fraction, free floating fraction, 1 over 2, and multiply by 3 to get 3 over 6. And it's still the same fraction, right? It has a different denominator, but it still represents the same physical property and it still has the same proportion. So in this case, I don't need to multiply anything to get to 20 here, so it's just going to be 1. But over here, I had to multiply by 2 to get to 20. That means I need to do the same thing up here. So this is going to be 2 over 20 plus 1 over 20 gives me 3 over 20. Okay, does anybody feel like you want me to just repeat that again? That was a little too much or too fast?
Yes, please.
Okay, so this is the reason why I'm explaining this, because I honestly, if I was doing this problem, I wouldn't waste my time with a common denominator. But on the IB exam, there are problems where you're not allowed to use a calculator, and they oftentimes ask this very problem. And so finding a common denominator, for example, if I take 1/2, I could multiply by 2, that would give me 2 over 4, but it's still the same fraction, right? And there's no equal sign. I'm not doing algebra here. I'm not doing the same thing to both sides of the equation. It's that if I multiply the top and the bottom of any fraction, it does not change the proportion, but it will allow me to add things together, because you can't add fractions unless they have the same denominator. It just is not going to work. So everything has to get the same common denominator. So 3 over 6 or 4 over 8 or 10 over 20. These are all the same thing. I've just multiplied by some constant value. But it's still, if I put it in a calculator, 10 divided by 20, it's going to say 0.5, just like if I put 1 divided by 2. So it is mathematically the same thing, but it allows us to make the calculation. And so in this one, if I was not being allowed to use a calculator, this would be really important to make sure that I try to take care of this thing. So in any case, I get essentially an easy way to get a common denominator, by the way, is just multiply the two denominators. That would give me 200. So then what I would do is I would say 10 times 20 is 200. 10 times 1 is 10. Then I would go over to the other side. I say 20 times 10 is 200. 20 times 1 is 20. And I would end up with 30 over 200. It's exactly the same thing as what I've got right here. So that's a quick, easy way to get a common denominator, but it's obviously not the lowest common denominator. The lowest common denominator in this case is going to be the 20. And we will come back to this. So if it's not clicking right now, I'm going to come back to this. I'm going to remind you guys of this because, it's a skill that you learn, but I know like those skills kind of evaporate over time. So without practice, they've kind of atrophied. Let me show you what's going to happen right now. I'm going to rewrite this one because I feel like it's going to be a little confusing. Delta Q over 20 times 10. I'm not doing the math yet. I'm purposely not doing the math yet. Is equal to 3 over 20. All right, well, how do you get delta Q by itself? Well, you're going to multiply by 20 times 10, so that's going to be 3 over 20 times 20 times 10. Look, the 20s cancel out. And the answer is 30. Ta-da! Done. No calculator. Now, if I had made that calculation of the reason why I didn't multiply the 20 is because I could see that it was going to cancel out up here. I could see it. It was going to go from the bottom on the left side to the top on the right side. So therefore the 20 was going to disappear. Now I could have put the 200 in there, and obviously it wouldn't be that complicated to see that 200 divided by 20 is 10. But by leaving it like this, it did make the math a little easier. And I think that's something you'll find very commonly, that is the way that it works. So our final answer, Q plus or minus delta Q, is equal to 200 plus or minus 30. And there's no units for this because they didn't tell me what it was. This was just generic math. Any questions on that before we move on to the next one? I will look at... Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, 2 plus or minus 0.3. Would that be the same? Would that be equivalent to the same answer? No.
Say it one more time.
Because I got 2 plus or minus 0.3.
For the final answer?
Yeah.
I'm trying to see
the range method.
The range method? Can you take a picture of it and send it to me, and I'll find where the mistake is. I mean, I feel pretty confident that this is the answer. I mean, I don't memorize all the answers to these, but the book says it's what?
That's 10A, right? It says
10A.
2.0 plus 0.3.
Did I just read the numbers wrong? Yeah, right. But, oh my God, dumb. So stupid. Yes. Thank God you pointed that out. I'm so glad you stuck with that. Yeah, I made a mistake. Do you guys see where I made the mistake? Everything is right, but there's one thing I plugged in incorrectly, but I just wasn't paying attention. I just wasn't paying attention to it, and that's where I made my mistake. Anyone see where it is? It's right here. I multiplied 20 by 10. You know what I'm saying? I'm going to take your silence as no. The calculation is 20 divided by 10. So Q is the answer to the calculation. But what I did down here was I said 20 times 10, but it should have been 20 divided by 10. 20 divided by 10. So let's take a look at what that's going to do up here. So let me get rid of this. I'm going to actually just take this part right here. I'm just going to cross it out. That was a mistake. Let's bring the math back over from here, and let's see how things work out. So do you guys know how to, when you divide by, well, let me leave it this way. Yeah, let me just do it this way. Delta Q is equal to 3 over 20. That part did not change. Okay, that part did not change. But the number that I'm multiplying by here, so I have 20 divided by 10. So I'm going to multiply, right, by the, I'm going to multiply by that. I'm going to multiply by 20 over 10. Does this make sense that I'm multiplying by 20 over 10 to get rid of this? Let me know if that doesn't make sense to you. I could kind of go over it a little more clearly if you feel like it's not making sense. I'm going to multiply both sides, the left and right, by 20 divided by 10. And again, part of the reason why I'm not doing the math, because obviously that's 2, right? 20 divided by 10 is 2. The reason why I'm not doing the math is because, again, I can see that there's going to be some cancellation that's going to make them, it's not going to make it a lot easier. Frankly, it's exactly the same thing. But I do think for you guys that it would make it a little bit easier. So I'm going to multiply the left and the right side by 20 divided by 10. That's going to kill it on this side. And I'll end up with 20 over 10. And that's where the 0.3 is coming from. Yes, thank you for pointing out that I made a mistake. And everything was right. It's just that when I calculated the value of the calculation, I don't know why, but for some reason I just multiplied the two, but it told me that I was supposed to divide. right? The value of Q is A divided by B, not A times B. What do you guys think? Oh my God. Can't help it. Keep hitting these cameras. Does that make a little bit more sense? Cricket sounds. Danielle says yes. Couple people. Okay, I do apologize because that's like really horrible. But fortunately, it was a very simple mistake. It was one mistake that was easily fixed. It did change the final answer for the uncertainty though. And the reason is because remember, you will have to take whatever's on the bottom over here and you will be multiplying it over to the other side to get Q by itself. So even though the right side was completely correct, I still ended up with a different absolute uncertainty because that absolute uncertainty requires me to multiply by whatever the answer to the calculation was. So obviously 20 divided by 10 is 2. And that's why what you were doing with the range method was working out because you were doing it correctly and I was doing it incorrectly. So yes, the answer is Q plus or minus delta Q is equal to 2.0 plus or minus 0.3. And we could also go 2.00 plus or minus 0.30. That would be acceptable also, but to me, that feels weird. Like, I don't know why we'd be adding on an extra zero there. The calculation said the uncertainty is in the tenths place, didn't say anything about the hundredths. So I would say that the first answer is probably the better of the two answers.